Her name is Angel. She's unlike any high school student you've ever met.
Are you having difficulty making friends?
I'm on top of the honors list.
There's more to life than getting straight A's.
Her only friends are on the streets. Her only chance is on her own.
You're young, attractive, healthy. You're swimming around in a toilet bowl.
I was alone.
Where's your mom, Angel?
One day I came home from school and she was gone. Just that note, $100 bill. I just put on some sexy clothes and high heels and went out and made a living.
Everything in life has a price on it, Angel. Somewhere down the line, you're gonna have to pay.
It's my life.
Angel, her two worlds are about to collide.
Remind me never to get murdered.
Angel, it's her choice, her chance, and her life.
Did you grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or nothing got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or nothing got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek. Tell me why. Tell me why.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon. This is a celebration of the B-movie, the cult classic, the stupid, the amazing, the underrated, and occasionally erotic. That's right, we're here to talk about all the things that may have hid at the back of the video store, but are now finally seeing release from partners such as Vinegar Syndrome and other boutique companies like this. So in this particular episode of the show, we're going to be taking a look at a recent release from Vinegar Syndrome, where we take a look at the Angel series of movies. You may have never heard of these, but I am not alone as I travel down Hollywood Boulevard in the 1980s. I am joined with my ever-loving compatriot from the town of craft beer and Oktoberfest.
I think you're talking about me. That's Alex here.
That's right, because these guys had this extensive conversation about beer, towards I'm totally clueless. And of course, it would not be Loose Cannon without one of my favorite people that I've gotten to know in the last little bit, and that is Aaron.
Hi, it's Aaron Pollyea, and I'm not from the land of beer, but Michigan does have quite a few microbreweries, so maybe we are the land of beer.
Now we're starting to find out things about each other's cultures. So yes, guys, we are here to talk about this recent release from Vinegar Syndrome that was sent to us a little while ago. Alex, have we done a full review of the Blu-rays themselves?
No, we figured because there were 3 of them sent in the series that we would watch them and then sort of group them together because they're available individually or as a set.
Yeah, so this is something that me and Alex watched over the course of a weekend. We watched all 3 movies. And I originally had a little bit of hesitation to talk about this, but after Alex, in his very convincing way, I'm pretty sure Alex would be a wonderful hostage negotiator in some future life. He kind of framed it a little bit differently. What we're looking at here is a different type of exploitation film, but one that actually has a lot of heart in it, surprisingly. Through watching these, I did not expect these to be as good and entertaining as they were. And it's not just because the premise is interesting, but it's the cast. The cast, especially in the first two movies, is phenomenal.
Yeah, and while we're beating around the bush, ha ha ha, the first film is about underage prostitution. And you were like, is that something we can talk about in today's day and age? And it's like, yes, because after watching some of the behind the scenes that we did for the release, they talk about that they ripped the idea from the headlines of what was happening at the time. So this wasn't like somebody came up with an idea for a film and they thought, oh, let's make an exploitation film about teenagers. This was a lifestyle and thing that was happening in LA at the time.
And we should make clear that the first movie that deals specifically with teenage prostitution, the teenage prostitute is never shown.
Nope, not once.
Not once. She's shown always to be kind of in control of the situation that she's in.
Yeah, she doesn't get naked. She doesn't show anything. It's even the violence involved in it. It happens around her. She'll want to get violent, but she doesn't.
Yeah,
and of course, all the actors in it are in their 20s or older.
Yeah,
even the ones portraying people in their teens. So obviously this wasn't like an underground flick. It was a movie recorded for original theatrical release. So everything's on the up and up with it. And the sequels obviously take place when this person is an adult already anyway.
Yeah.
So the first movie, in short, involves a girl named Molly who is currently going to this rich kind of private kind of prep school, but she doesn't participate in a lot of after school activities. She has to quote unquote go home and look after her sick mother who had a stroke and her father who has disappeared from the picture entirely. Unbeknownst to many people, she is a streetwalker known as Angel. She has an eclectic crew of people that she hangs out with. She is friends with, I guess you'd call them a drag queen, May or Marvin, who is of utter joy in this. I think it was Dick Shawn was the actor's name.
Dick Shawn. Yeah.
Fantastic. There's another one that they hang out with is a street performer named Yo-Yo, whose main shtick is a yo-yo, and he kind of dresses like Charlie Chaplin. Kit Carson, who is an aging Hollywood cowboy who thinks he's got one last rodeo in him. And then the story kind of sets up is that Angel still making money on the streets to obviously keep herself going. But then these murders start happening and other prostitutes are being killed off. And one of them hits particularly close to home as Yo-Yo is supposed to go out on a date with her the following day and she is murdered. And the story basically goes from there until eventually the killer decides to go after Angel herself. And a lot of people die. Actually, I missed this the first time around. I rewatched it because Angel got a good look at him at one point after one of her friends was killed. She saw him running away from the scene, I think. She goes to identify him at a lineup. And like in the Terminator, the suspect kills a bunch of cops. And I must have looked down at my phone for a minute because I was like, I don't remember this.
It made sense. It made sense that how he did it. It's that a cop screwed up and had a gun inside like the lineup room, and he grabbed the gun, held a person hostage, started firing, and the other cops were just so taken aback by like the extreme ramp up of violence.
And it's what we would have nowadays where the cops don't walk around the office with their guns. They have to check them in when they walk in.
Yeah. 1984. So a different world.
Yeah.
So, and then what we see is the killer tracks Angel down to her place. Killer meets May there, who happened to be in the apartment. She was pretending to be Angel's mom when a school counselor had dropped in and May is murdered, although dies in the arms of her LGBTQ plus lover, Solly. And it's actually a touching death, although she says, "You still owe me $120 expletive," which I can't repeat on this show, but it's funny.
There's lots of colorful language.
Yeah, definitely a product of 1984. But then she goes downstairs, grabs a Dirty Harry like hand cannon, and decides to, I'm going to find this piece of shit and deal with justice in my own way. 6 shots at a time. And eventually justice is served. Fortunately, through Kit, who is the cowboy who does get hurt during the pursuit, but turns out his cap guns are actually real revolvers, and he pumps him full of like 12 shots.
Kit is unsung like hero of the first 2 movies.
He's going a little senile. He sometimes thinks he really was a cowboy, then sometimes realizes he's not. But turns out was a legit crack shot. So you've got that. He also, like, I guess that's the basic plot. One thing we can say, when we were watching it, you were concerned initially, Michael, if they were going to be like how insensitive they were going to be to a lot of the people in the film. And it turned out, like, in both films that he is in, he, like, if he sees somebody that presents as a female, he talks to them and says, "Hey, ma'am." If he's male, like, there's no, like, surprisingly, they got their pronouns right for the time period.
Yeah, like...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, they handled it so much more respectfully than I actually thought they were going to. They only used one word that I guess you could really deem offensive, but May/Marvin is played completely straight, for lack of a better phrase here. They never play it for laughs. You just accept them as, "Hi, I'm May. This is my partner, Solly," and it is what it is. And I was so impressed with that. And these characters, despite coming from all different walks of life, experiences, and everything else, you never treat them any different. They're not treated as jokes.
There's a sense of family and community amongst them.
Yeah.
And when I was watching it, I was really, well, obviously with Kit, the cowboy, just the fact that he was so pleasant and earnest with everyone, just upfront with how being kind and saying "ma'am," "sir," it didn't matter. It was, if you were respectful, he would respect you. And it didn't matter who you were, what your biological gender was. It didn't matter to him. It was that you wanted to be this, so he was going to respect you and treat you like that. Mm-hmm. And it just made me feel so good watching that.
It's something that, again, you don't really see from that time period. A lot of times everything was played either for jokes or was sometimes just mean-spirited, period. So it was a breath of fresh air to see that it was like that.
And it even goes a little further in the second film, but I'll talk about that in the second film. What I saw in the second film. Go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, one of the other characters and one of the other actors, the person who played the cop who befriends Angel, who tells her to get off the streets, this guy, really good. Like, there's something I wonder if he played more cops in the 1980s, because he seems so comfortable in that role. You get a really good chemistry between him and Angel as they try and work things out. He tries to talk her out of doing this. He says, "Don't go it alone. You can't do justice all by yourself." And she's like, "Yeah, fucking watch me." And there's just, I liked he wanted to protect her. He wanted to get her out of this terrible life. I don't know. There's something so warm about that. Like, if Angel did anything right, a lot of its supporting cast is so likable and so genuine. I can't think of many bad performances outside of maybe like the bullies that are terrible in this movie.
Yeah,
like, I'm so surprised.
Like, in my notes that I took, because of course I take notes on everything that I watch, the things that I wrote here were that all of the supporting cast were believable in their parts, except for the bullies, and were a joy to watch, that you actually started learning their names. Like usually, there's a character, Yo-Yo Charlie, this Yo-Yo guy. Normally, you wouldn't give a crap about that kind of character in a modern film. Yeah, he's kind of a throwaway character, but you actually cared about this guy. And then the performance that he gives when his would-be girlfriend, the prostitute, was murdered, and he's bawling, holding like a bloody top that he had given her as a gift.
And it's not like hamming it up way over the top. It's believable.
It's completely believable, and your heart goes out to him. And the other thing I wrote here is that this is filmed extremely well. It's lit well. The film quality is well. It feels like in 1984 it was a $70 million film. That's what it looks like. And when I say that, it's just that everything is lit properly. The sets are done right. The cameras are set up right. The costumes are done right. Everything.
And for the longest time, it was sort of relegated to being stuck on like old 4x3 transferred VHS tapes. So right on the back of the box for this one, it said, while this is obviously a 1080p release, it was remastered and scanned in again at 4K. So you can see that Vinegar Syndrome took the time to make sure it was a pretty pristine print.
I said to my wife when we were watching this that this is not a B movie. This is a good movie. This is actually a standout film that I would watch again and not ironically watch or watch for laughs. This is honestly a good film. The only thing that comes off as being B movie-ish is the amount of nudity in it.
Yeah, which was sort of, again, par for the course, late 70s, early 80s. That was sort of a thing. I'm looking, the director himself, what did he direct? Only 8 properties. And I don't see any others that we would know, probably. They looked like smaller pictures. In fact, stopped directing after 1985. And only wrote, after this came out, only wrote for a TV show called Lady Blue.
Never even heard of it.
That was a woman detective show. It came out a year later, or 2 years later. So interestingly, didn't really do a whole lot. I would have figured this is a director that went on to do a lot more things. But it was over on the music, and it was pretty good too.
So one thing I should also point out is the director of photography. Since I said that this looks like a beautiful film, the director of photography would go on to become the director of Under Siege.
Oh, okay. So that's why it looks the way it does, which were big, multi-million-dollar pictures.
Yeah, but this guy was clearly skilled. This guy was really good. His name was Andrew Davis.
Okay. So, as far as resolution goes in the film, it's kind of surprising that for a movie that you sort of figure advertises itself as, being a revenge flick, she doesn't really do any of the violence herself. You notice that?
I mean, she shoots the gun, but that's only in the last 10 minutes.
But she doesn't hit anybody.
No, she fires 6 shots. They go wild. It isn't until the second one where she actually managed to getting she gets a fairly sizable kill streak going. But yeah, in this one, not so much.
And we watched the behind the scenes, Mike. Remember what when they interviewed Donna Wilkes, the main actress?
Yeah.
That she said that they didn't have permission to shoot almost anywhere.
Oh my God. Okay. So there's one scene in this movie. She's walking down the street with this giant fucking hand cannon, and people on the street are looking at her and they're scrambling away. Those are real reactions.
One shot, one take, and then they had to get in a car and drive away before the cops showed up.
I believe it because that looked good. That looked real. Like all the extras. I was thinking, wow, they really did it with these extras. Okay. Knowing now they did that for
they couldn't, they figured, if we can't afford good extras, we'll just make it look real because it is real.
That's stunning.
So the look on her face where she looked nervous and terrified, it's because she didn't know if somebody on the street was going to pull out a gun and shoot her.
Yeah. Like her performance, Donna Wilkes, I wish she'd done more that I've seen.
She was in Jaws 2.
She was in Jaws 2. She does horror conventions every now and again and like conventions of that sort. She did like she did something like the Sharknado movies at one point in the 2000 or like 2014. I think she did something. But she is unexpected 80s crush. I did not expect her. And
you know why she disappeared, right? She said in that interview that she got pregnant and said she didn't want to raise a kid in Hollywood.
And that's a smart choice, and she made the right choice for her.
So she retired in 89 and didn't come back until 2009.
So, yeah, she's wonderful. And one of the things I have noticed, whoever the casting directors are in these movies, you see shades of Donna Wilkes in each of their faces. I'd say the second one, I think her name was Betsy something, looks the most like Molly growing up a little bit.
Yeah, Betsy Russell, who was in Saw 3 to 7, apparently.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Like, when I saw the name come up and I did a little bit of research, I'm like, really? I don't remember you. But overall, though, fairly, like I said, fantastic.
Yeah.
This movie's worth seeing.
It's
the first movie I would say is in itself a drama more than what I would consider to be a revenge flick. It's more of a legit drama. Now, you were telling us off air you have a rating system for B movies.
My rating system, boy, I love B movies. So I have like multiple categories that I generally give points to. Like every time you say what the fuck, you give a point. Every time you see nudity of any kind, there's a point. Now the nudity system gets a little different because there's scales of it that appear in B movies. So if there's, a topless woman, it's a point, okay, big deal. But if there's full frontal nudity with a woman, it's another point. So a total of 2. And then if you finally see the mythical full frontal male shot, that's a 3rd point. And this movie gets a lot of points. But believe it or not, it's because there is full frontal female nudity in it. That's actually, when you think about it, in an uncomfortable scene because it's inside the locker room of a high school. Think about that, guys. All those
That's
characters
right.
are supposed to be 18 or younger, and there are a lot of full frontal shots there.
And obviously, all the actresses are of age.
Yes, all of them are of age, but that was very uncomfortable.
And I will say this: you could argue the same thing about Porky's.
Yeah, you could.
Oh yeah.
Porky's, it's all about going after high school, and like when they're peeping through into the girls' change room, that's what, like, how many points you get there? There's like 20 girls that are full frontal there.
Yeah, it's one scene and it only counts once, so it'd be
10. That's how it works. Okay,
Yep.
But yeah, so there were plenty of movies where that was the case. That's what they did. So this isn't unique in itself. It's not something you would see likely in most of the movies now, unless it was for some reason HBO does stuff like that. So
yeah, and you could make the argument that they were all like seniors and 18, but I mean, still, it was still, to me, it was uncomfortable to watch. But there is nudity in it, and that's the one reason why I would say that this movie might be considered a B movie or an exploitation film. But honest to God, this is not. This is a great drama with fantastic acting. It just so happens to have a weird amount of nudity in it.
Yeah. So if we moving on to the second one, right?
Yes.
This is where we get into what I would consider like Canon Films, PM Release Group, all these like classic B movie revenge flicks. To me, it was a Charles Bronson movie, only with a female lead
and a cowboy.
Why a cowboy?
Yeah, because you have Kit Carson coming back. Rory Calhoun is the actor's name. He comes back, and I would still argue as like a first statement about Angel 2, the Angeling. Actually, it's Avenger. Again, this is actually a good movie. This is
it is, but it is much more in line with what I thought the first film would have been.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. It is a revenge film. It's much more of a revenge film. It's much more of like a action movie with a female lead. Absolutely.
It was almost like this could have been part of the Death Wish series.
Yeah, and I will also say that I found an Andy Sedaris connection. See, Andy Sedaris is one of my favorite B movie directors, and
we'll be talking about them.
Please have me on, because I find those movies to be a joy. But there is an Andy Sedaris connection in this movie. The actor Michael A. Andrews is in this movie as one of the drag queens.
Okay.
He is the person that actually plays in Hard Ticket to Hawaii and is working for Edie in Edie's restaurant.
Oh,
a incredibly beautiful woman when in drag. Like when I first saw her in drag, and I'll say her when she's in drag, completely passable, beautiful woman. And
yeah, absolutely.
When she slowly takes off the makeup in Hard Ticket to Hawaii, she's like, "Oh my god, wow, that's crazy." But she's just in this with another drag queen, and it's never mentioned as them being drag queens. They're just, once again, completely just a part of the film.
Well,
it's
and
acceptable.
Kit shows up and says, "Hello, ladies," and never. And when there's a part where they talk, and for a second he goes, or or fellas. Or ladies, like for a second he gets confused, and then he just continues on with ladies.
Yeah, he didn't like. You could tell that he's getting older. He starts the movie in an old folks home that really isn't an old folks home. It kind of seems like a psych ward to me.
Yeah.
So you can tell he's confused, but he's still Kit Carson, utter badass,
and gentleman.
Yes,
and so. The basic plot of this is the detective lieutenant that was really good to Molly in the first film gets murdered. And then she's like, I'm going to stop these murderers by murdering them.
But she can only do it, as she says, Angel can get this done because Molly can't go certain places.
Exactly. So this is taking place, I think, is it 4 years?
Yeah,
said?
Yeah, 4 years later.
4 years, even though it's filmed only a year after the first movie.
Yeah, so she's supposed to be like 19 or 20 now. She's in college. She has a boyfriend. That boyfriend doesn't show up ever again.
But he's there for like 5 minutes and then gone.
First scene. And may I also say that in the second scene where we see the killers that have killed her, I want to say adoptive father. It seemed to me like he had actually adopted her,
or like foster father or something. Or at least that's how he treated it. Or like clearly he was her guardian or something.
When we first see the killers, let's give them props because they completely they murdered people with safety in mind by wearing safety glasses and proper ear protection.
Yeah. One kind of looked like my dad, which kind of was like, whoa.
I'm actually shocked because usually in these movies you see, people just wielding guns like they really aren't guns and being...
Well, and they all look nervous in the car.
Yeah.
They're actually nervous pulling up. They're checking their guns to make sure that they're working.
Yeah.
They even check to like see if the safeties are on or off. They check the ammo, they check the mags because they don't want to go in and have it jam.
Yeah, and then they put on their safety glasses and ear protection. I mean, wow. Yeah. Good job, guys. Thanks.
And I love the soundtrack. It's just that 80s like synth rock.
Oh god, yeah, it was good music. I actually have that written down. I also have written down that in the first at minute 6 and 36 seconds, full frontal nudity.
Yep.
Yes, and it was good. For lack of better
term.
No, it gets right to it. I'll say this: the people they cast were beautiful in these films. And this revolved, the whole reason that her, I guess, adopted father dies is he is, I guess, the handler for an undercover cop in this sort of ruthless
real estate scam.
Real estate mafia-like organization. And she was going to hand over documents that proved who was involved. So she lives in Chinatown. They show up and just kill her parents and her. Also, I'll give them props for one thing. This movie is from a time where they would have just cast whomever. They actually cast a half Asian, half Caucasian actress to play the undercover cop. And her parents were, one was Asian, one was Caucasian. So you know how many times in the past they used to just cast anybody, or they would be like, we're going to cast a white person, and in blanket statement, and then just put makeup on them. No, they actually it's clear that the script called for something, and they actually cast that way.
One of the things I did like about that scene, this will probably reveal Mike's inner gun nut. I like how one of the guys was using what is essentially a combat shotgun. Yeah. That would have done significant damage to that apartment and anybody unlucky enough to get in the way of that thing. If I'm not mistaken, if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me somewhere. One of the goons is wielding a Spaz 12.
Oh, it is a Spaz 12. Yeah.
Let's say, yeah, you issue that to SWAT teams.
Well, and I like that she wasn't as an officer completely useless. She gets a shot off and actually injures one of them, but it's overwhelming numbers.
Yeah, like if you could buy the fact that if it was one guy in there, that this woman was skilled enough to have actually gotten out of there fine.
Or even if there were two, she might have been able to shoot and get up. But she's also panicked because she could hear her parents getting murdered.
Yeah. And she still has the presence of mind at least to get a good shot off before she gets gunned down. I actually felt bad for that actress.
Yeah. And it was
acting too.
Oh, yeah. And that's exactly. Like, I mean, she wasn't, cast for, I don't even think she says like one thing, I think, to her parents, and that's it. There's like one line. If that. But at the same time, I wasn't expecting the movie to get into the action that quickly. Like, the movie opens with like 2 minutes of catching up with the cast, and then bam, right into this. And then it's sort of getting the gang back together. I like that there were returning faces. I don't believe the yo-yo guy was in this one very much, was he?
He was in it. Yeah,
he drove a cameo
at the beginning, right?
He drove the hearse.
Oh, that's right. He did.
Yeah, I was really happy to see Yo-Yo and Sully, the two characters, come back. Solly.
Yeah, that's right.
Susan Tyrell, and she's been in a lot of things, and she is a joy in both the first two movies.
You know what it is? I think it's my brain is blending them together because we watched them all at once. Was this the film where they introduced the Glitter character?
Yeah, Johnny Glitter's awesome.
Johnny Glitter, yeah.
Yes, which had a couple moments that were, I would have said unintentionally funny, but it's clear they wrote it into the script. For instance, when he's sneaking away, he's still throwing glitter in front of himself. Like when he's crawling on the ground, he's still throwing the glitter up in there, and I was like, "Why is he doing that?" So I started laughing.
Yeah, but it's his shtick. Like that's his whole thing. He always has handfuls of glitter, and he's throwing it everywhere on everyone because he wants to leave his mark everywhere.
Like he's hiding and running for his life, but it's like glitter.
He gets shoved out of a door and just tosses glitter into the air. It's just his thing. It's really funny. But
could you imagine being that actor? It would have taken weeks to get it all out of like your clothes, your hair, everywhere.
You're assuming that he probably still has some stuck to him now.
Yeah,
it's been 40 years.
He had to be accidentally ingesting huge amounts of glitter from that film, so he was shitting gold for a while.
It's 1984, 1985. They were all probably doing coke.
Now, just as a point of curiosity, I was very curious. You can buy pounds of glitter on Amazon for about $20.
Oh, don't you dare!
Say, I've got some money.
Because I've seen people send glitter bombs, and that's worse than like anything I can imagine. Because if you open that and it sprays in every direction, you're never getting it. You just have to get a new apartment or a new house.
Did you notice? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you notice how often that the other actors had glitter on them when they were around?
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually had enough continuity of costume that they kept putting glitter on people.
Or it just was happening.
Yeah. I have to say, this movie actually has the best death that I saw out of all the four.
Where the guy slipped out the window?
Yes. He slips on soapy water, slides down to a ground level window, blows through it, lands on top of a hearse and dies, and then slides off the dented roof of the hearse onto the front window screen so Yo-Yo can scream. Fantastic.
The only thing that would have made that scene better is if he used the windshield wipers.
That would have made it cheesier, I think.
But there are things in this that I did notice when they're driving the hearse. If you listen to the way the car starts and sputters, that is a fucking Looney Tune sound effect.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hey, there are some amazing little sound cues in this movie that I was noticing, and I was like, whoever edited this or who was the sound editor must have had fun.
And then they have the scene of drag queens versus gangsters. the fight
Yeah.
scene. Oh my god!
I love the gangsters show up, don't realize that what they're up against, and when the fight starts, they start to lose initially.
Yeah, because the drag queens are just like, okay, let's pull up our dresses and start kicking ass. And
yeah, they think, oh, these girls are going to beat us up, and they're strong.
yeah. And they're never mentioned to be like, oh well, these are men. It's never mentioned that. It's that these girls are kicking her ass, and yeah.
And we forgot to mention that it's just because they're babysitting a baby that was abandoned.
Little Buck.
That's become sort of like, I guess the community, the whole street adopted the baby.
It's baby's day out with drag queens and gangsters. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I personally liked when they capture the real estate mob boss's son,
yeah,
and then kill him point blank, shoot him in the head, and he's dead. And then immediately they're like, we need to trade him for the baby, and they're like, okay. So they weekend at Bernie's it.
Yes, that's exactly what I said when it happened.
They're Bernieing this thing, and they duct tape over the hole in his head.
Yeah. And
so funny.
They show up and they're like, hey, something's wrong. It's like, that's a bullet hole.
Yeah, the duct tape falls off, and they're like,
the best part is his eyes are open and staring at his father.
Yeah. I cracked up watching that scene. That was really good.
And I was concerned for the baby, for real. Especially when they break apart and they have their little shootouts and each person gets to kill somebody sort of moment. Now they filmed it obviously hokey now. Now they would have just used a green screen and like CG'd the baby in, but they make the baby fall legit. Like I'm like, oh, they're gonna grab it. Nope, the baby falls and the cowboy catches him.
Yeah, Kit. Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, the baby falls multiple stories.
Oh yeah.
and he catches the baby like it's nothing. He's like, hello. Baby's fine. That's what made me think of like a Charles Bronson type movie. It just felt like Death Wish, anywhere from Death Wish 2 to 4.
I once again, I'll say I liked this movie a lot. This was an honest, good movie.
Yeah, and Mike, what did you think? I like this one the best out of all of them.
I think I like this one the second best. Angel 1 is probably my best because it plays it the most straight. This one I like as a pure B movie that's just a little bit below A, and I say that because it's funny. It's got the right amount of heart in it. The characters are likable. This is something that if you saw in a VHS rental store back in the 80s, you might take a chance on if you'd heard it was connected to the original. Even then, I think positive word of mouth would have done this movie a lot of favors. However, from what I understand, it was not very successful during its initial box office run.
I would say I like the first Angel movie just slightly more than this one, but I really like this one just in a different way. Like the first one's a more serious, straightforward movie. Like, it's played straight. This has a little more comedy. The second movie has a little more comedy, and that's great. Yeah. It's still fantastic. It's a little more actiony. That's great. I recommend both of them.
Also, props go out to, in the second film, casting Ossie Davis as Captain Harry Moradian, I think is his last name in it. I've always liked him. He's also been old forever. Like he had gray hair 40 years ago, apparently. Trying to think, was there anybody else in this one? I don't think there was anybody that popped up. Like I always like looking at these older films and seeing like who might have got their start in it. Like if you go back and watch the original Death Wish, one of the bad guys is Jeff Goldblum in his first movie role. And I don't know if it's the first Death Wish or if it's Death Wish. I think it's the first one or Death Wish 2 has Denzel Washington in his first role. So it's always surprising to see people like that. So this movie made just under $6 million at the box office. I don't predict the film cost more than a couple million to make, because at the time you could still make movies fairly cheap.
Well, yeah, because when you consider when this came out, you could make like for example, the first Nightmare on Elm Street was only $1 million movie, and that was in 1984. This one came out in what, 85, 86?
Yeah, 85.
Yeah. So to give you an idea, they don't have a listing of how much it costs. I'm going to assume it's about $3 to $4 million. It might have broke even. Angel, the first one, cost $3 million and made just under 18.
Big success then.
Yeah, big success, especially for the 80s. You do that, you convert for inflation. That's like 25, 30 now.
Yeah.
Which I would say is about where you'd see a lot of those action movies that Liam Neeson puts out. It's that sort of vein, or sort of where they make the film fairly cheap, but they expect anywhere 20 to 30 million. So yeah, it would have been, I would assume, a pretty big hit at the time. They were distributed by New World Pictures, which is Roger Corman's company. So I know his distribution tactics were, I think he would rent out the screen. Like he was from that old school where he would contact the theaters and be like, I will pay you a flat rate for the screen, and then he would take all of the box office from it. So I don't think they can't do that anymore. I think Disney's the only one that tries to do that.
I'd like to introduce the third film.
Oh, please
yes.
do.
Yes, I was going to say. So how did this one rate on your B movie scale? Was this more B movie?
It's on the second movie. You mean?
Yes.
The second movie, I would say, is a better movie overall, and it actually rates higher on my scale, even though there is less nudity than the first movie. Now, the third movie, which is called Angel 3: The Final Chapter, in Sweden, it was released as Angel 3: Slutstriden.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
So my wife nicknamed it Angel 3: The Sluttening. And this film is notable for pretty much one thing. When I was taking notes, it's obviously a very different film than the first two. Different director, different writer, different actors and actresses. There aren't any reappearing characters from the first two movies except for Molly Angel, but she's a different actress. This movie is notable for just having nudity. Incredible amounts of nudity, though no full frontal, but it's pretty much, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 scenes of nudity in an hour and 20 minutes. It's just constant breasts on film, and that's about what all of my notes are for it. That would be B movie notes. There aren't really many notable lines to me in the third film, though there was an actress that appeared in it that I was really shocked to see, and that was what is it? It's Tony. Was it Tony from the Mickey video? Hey Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my
really okay.
Yeah, she is in this, and I was kind of shocked to see her. That's
I know Maud Adams was in it. Who played two different Bond girls.
Yeah, she was an
Octopussy, Man with the Golden Gun. And apparently was also in A View to a Kill in an uncredited scene. Interesting. But yeah, so I know I recognize a couple people from this.
Tony Basil. That's
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as anybody else, Richard Roundtree's in it too.
So Shaft shows up.
Yes. And I don't think there's anybody else famous that pops up, but it does continue the plot line. She finally finds her mother,
and then she blows up.
Yes.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked about that. Like, it's really coincidental, and this is another one of my points. A big coincidence gets points in my B movie scale ratings, but it's that Molly just so happens to see her mother at a New York art premiere and figures out exactly where she's living. Flies to LA just at the right time to get involved with her own murder and the kidnapping of her half sister. It's just very, very coincidental that sets up the coincidences that set up this movie. But yeah, Angel has a half sister,
and you were right. There's a lot more nudity. There was a lot more pointless nudity in this.
Yeah, pointless nudity. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just walking around. Hey, I've got boobs. Party on.
Yeah, there's a whole scene where there's girls getting sold into slavery, and they're just posing in like a roped off area with no tops on.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the porno set for no reason.
Oh my God, the porno set. That was terrible. I mean, there's less nudity than you would think on a porno set, which is kind of shocking. But yeah, there was still nudity, and it was just kind of there. But there was one funny scene with that porn. It's when the main actress in this pornography that was being filmed breaks a nail, and she's like, "Oh, I broke a nail, and I have to do this scene." And the director's like, "Well, we'll get you a fake one. You know, it's obviously we have to do a close up because, you know, you're jerking a guy off." And she's like, "A fake one? You mean a fake dick?" And he's like, "No, you idiot, a fake nail." What do you think? What do you think?
One of the
fake dick.
And one of the deaths in this used the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, Wilhelm scream.
And that's so we start to hear a little more. Also, the music. They got a band for this, but the music was a bit of a downgrade, and they started to use some stock music. I noticed for this one. I think it was released in '88. It did not make its money back in theaters.
I did write down that the main actors were all pretty good still. They all were well directed. They all did a really good job with the material they were given. So no, you know, let's not shit all over the film. But yeah, it's definitely a different level than the first two.
And so like that's not much more we can say. The transfer was good. The video quality was good. The audio quality was good. From Vinegar Syndrome, their release was good for it, but it is clearly the weakest of the trilogy that they released. Then we found out there's a fourth film, which is not part of, you know, this Vinegar Syndrome release, because as far as we know, it's still in release limbo and has only ever had a VHS, but it's up on YouTube. So I know, Birdman, you didn't see it.
I did.
You would like it because it is Wilhelm screams and a ton of stuff from, I think is it the Sony or one of these libraries where they have all the different screams? And they're like egregious, like loud. Like somebody will fall and it'll be a quiet scene and you'll hear yeah.
To give it a really quick overview, it's called Angel 4 Undercover, and Angel in this movie does not look like any of the other actresses. In fact, her name is Darlene Vogel, and you may know her as Spike from Back to the Future 2. She's the blonde girl that rides the hoverboards.
Okay.
Like that's where I knew her from. So she's blonde in this too, and so she doesn't look like any of the other actresses that have played.
Now she works for the police, and she's like a photographer.
Yeah,
and she's dating a radio DJ.
Yeah, and this is all in LA.
Yeah, all in LA, and dating a radio DJ. And this is about seedy dealings with, I guess, I almost fell asleep watching.
I didn't, because I actually kind of got into some parts of it. Now, I'm not saying it's a good movie because it's actually the worst of all four, but
yes, it's, I found it
in this. Roddy McDowell.
Yeah, Roddy McDowell, Peter Jurassic, who you know from Babylon 5, and Patrick Kilpatrick, who's in every single bad direct-to-video movie ever.
Yeah, so I mean, there are people in it, and I thought Roddy McDowell did a good job with his stuff, but...
Oh, yeah. Oh, he is so goofy and over the top in some scenes. It's great.
I thought the music was actually okay. You know, and that's coming from the point of view of this is a pretty much a direct-to-video kind of release.
Yeah.
Definitely a B movie, but I thought, like, the music that they had for AK-47, which is the band that's in this movie, you know, it didn't sound that bad. It wasn't great.
Yeah, a lot of the songs are credited to AK-47, but it's clearly some other band they paid to make the music.
Yeah, but I liked it.
Yeah, it's a lot of trickery and bribery and crazy stuff happening within the music industry. So, Mike, you probably get a kick out of it. It's worth watching. I double checked. There is never been a DVD release of this. The VHS is from like Vidmark, and I don't think the company even exists anymore.
Oh.
But there is a super high quality copy easily found on YouTube to watch, and it's been up for years. So I'm assuming there's no copyright holder, or they just don't know that it's there. It is worth watching for the deaths having some of the best screams and craziness, but it is a peak early 90s direct-to-video movie.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you might see on Cinemax late at night.
Yeah, it was something where you'd walk into Walmart and they had that bin and you're like, $2? Okay. Or it would have been sitting at your local like convenience store to rent for like 10 years and nobody touched it.
Yeah, and then you would rent it and go, wow, this is kind of crazy. This is worth the rental fee, but it's not amazing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I can see why it wasn't included with the trilogy. I don't believe it was not the same company that released it. And I believe they only went with the theatrical releases for the Vinegar Syndrome releases. It would be interesting to see what it would look like if they cleaned up the picture.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely not the same as the other 3 films. But yeah, if you like the other 3 films, I think it's worth checking out on YouTube. It's not going to cost you anything.
Yeah,
and I am surprised they didn't try to make more. This I could see this. Had they made a 5th and 6th and 7th one, it would have been a case of now there's a new Angel, or there would have been something where they could have done like a 20 years later one. Like I could have seen this being something that they made and played it to death until it was run into the dirt. And luckily, I think the 4 pictures is enough. They left this one open enough that they could have continued to do more, but it really was detached from anything in the previous 3.
Yeah, I mean, the 3rd movie was kind of detached from the other 2 somewhat. There were still connections, but the 4th one is very detached. And yeah, you're right. They could have kept making them. I'm glad they didn't, but they could have. And it probably still would have made a profit because it's not like these movies cost a lot to make.
Yeah, this one was clearly the lowest budget of the bunch, but still entertaining.
Oh, for sure.
So, and that's probably going to do it. How did this one rate on your scale?
It was much higher. So, like, to explain my scale, a low amount of points means it's either a movie that's good in objective ways, like, hey, look, Apocalypse Now is not going to have many B movie points, right? Or it can mean that it's a bad movie that just isn't very memorable. Or you have super high amounts of points on my scale. And that just means that the B movie's really over the top and probably purposely made to be stupid. I look at the later Sharknado films as that they're just, they're shit, but they're purposely that way.
Yeah, and there's a point where you're what the fuck sort of category.
Yeah.
In those, I was when we watched those, like I watched them for Mike and I had to talk about them. The last few, I was like, I wasn't even really going what the fuck anymore because I'm like, okay, when's the next thing? Like, you know what I mean? That's how quickly it was coming. I almost like the what the fuck things when it's like there's a couple that happen in these movies where it's just out of the blue and you're like, what?
But yeah, and that's generally what when I give a what the fuck point to, it's where you go, whoa, what's going on? So Angel 4 has probably the highest amount of points of these 4 movies, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best B movie out of all these. Like to me, the best B movie of this is the 3rd film, where the first 2 films are honestly good movies.
Yeah, and as far as a recommendation goes for these, I would say they, depending on if you buy them from them directly or if you find them on like Amazon, they're about $20 to $23 or so a piece. I would say pick up the first 2.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The 3rd one will be more dependent on how much you like the first 2. And if you want to see the story move on, it's still an entertaining movie. But the first 2 really are like a 1-2 punch. Like, it's clear that they were intended to be made. Like, they always intended to have a sequel with how they wrote the second one.
Yeah. With the first one to go into the second one, yeah.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Yeah, so I agree. The first 2, they're worth $20 each. Absolutely. They're actually good movies.
Now, Michael, do you have any closing thoughts before we...
Ultimately, I think the series is worth checking out, at least the first 2, because it remains fairly close in its continuity with its characters and its themes. The leads are likable. The supporting cast is very likable between 2nd and 3rd. The 3rd movie, I honestly was pretty bored in, other than seeing a lot of nudity, but hey, don't look at my browser history. I'm just saying it didn't grab me as much as I wanted to. And that sucks because I think the idea for Angel is fairly fascinating. It could be made today with some tweaks to the script. The idea is very solid.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think that this is something they should revive?
I don't know, because, well, maybe, because if you took it from the idea of a girl maybe escaping sex trafficking by doing it herself, and someone tries to kill her, and there's somebody picking girls up off the street who's like a sex trafficker, maybe.
Like, do you think this would make for a good series of like streaming movies, or would this be like, would it have to be a series now?
See, my idea it would be that yes, you could revive it today. It could work. I would say make it a small, short, like 6-episode season. One,
like,
that's it. And each episode is like a small story of Angel dealing with somebody that's in her group, telling a story of like hardship or whatever, and going out and solving it.
What it feels like to me, more so than like Amazon or Netflix or even HBO, it feels like a Cinemax property, and not like, Skinemax and all. No, I'm talking how they did this run of original dramas like Strike Back. If you haven't seen it, it's a fantastic series, co-produced with the British, I think it's Sky satellite channel, where it's action, and then it has some nudity in it, and it's if you haven't seen it, it's super fun. About a tactical team that goes and tries to stop things like terrorists and all this, and there's always tons of sex and tons of violence and over the top funny parts. I could see it fitting in either as like a bunch of Cinemax TV movies, or like you said, as like a 6-episode, or even like you could do a 3-episode miniseries.
Yeah, you could like an hour and a half each or something like that.
Yeah. And tell the story of you could tell the story of the 3 films in that time period.
You could. And I think it could fit in Cinemax. You're right. But I also think, honestly, like Hulu, if you're telling a serious story about like a girl getting out of sex trafficking, or dealing with, living on the streets and living, hand to mouth with, prostituting herself and then trying to get out of that. I mean, it's a serious movie, or it would be a serious series. Just, you play all the characters seriously, and you don't make fun of them. You don't try to like make light of their situation. You play it off just like the movies did. That, this is kind of a harsh life.
Yeah.
No one really wants to be there.
Some characters would have to be adapted, because you couldn't make, Kit would be like 110. So
yeah,
you couldn't place him as being from the silent film era.
Yeah.
And the old like westerns of the 20s and 30s.
I think you'd see him being I think you'd see him be a Boulevard superhero, kind of like the Boulevard Superman or something.
No, you could cast him. If you wanted to make it, it wouldn't be a Hollywood Western star. It would have to be somebody from like the 60s Western TV shows.
Okay.
So because,
like Gunsmoke and Bonanza, right?
Yeah, you'd have to cast somebody. I'm thinking like a Clint Walker who did was Cheyenne, and you could pick one of these guys who are like in their 80s.
Yeah,
and that they would have been a TV star at the end of the black and white era. All the westerns in the 60s, and they would be age appropriate. So you could shift everybody up. And you're right, Mike. I think instead of the yo-yo guy, you would be like a Spider-Man, but it would have to be like some knockoff one, or it'd have to be some property they could get a license for.
Hollywood Bloodshot.
Yeah, it could be something else, or you'd probably go with something like Elvis. You'd have an Elvis performer. You'd have
God. Why couldn't you have Kit be Elvis, an Elvis impersonator?
Yeah, you could do that now. Yeah, it could be an Elvis impersonator, and he just never, like, he's been performing since the 70s.
Yeah, and no one takes him seriously because he's an Elvis impersonator. But it turns out that he had to hold his own back in Vegas back in the early 80s, so had to actually know how to use guns.
If you really wanted to keep in line with what he did as a performer, you could say, because he said he body doubled for some kid actor in one of the movies. You could say he was the stunt double for Elvis in the Elvis movies.
Okay, so in this new Angel movie, a prostitute, Elvis, and Spider-Man team up to fight crime. I'm in. You've
and
got
somebody,
my Netflix money.
Well, and the rest you keep with the LGBTQ community.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like you could hire right out of like any number of the Drag Race shows.
Well, if you want to get name recognition, you could just get RuPaul to be in it.
I wouldn't get RuPaul. I'd go, honestly, Sharon Needles. Does this kind of sound weird that I actually know about drag queens?
No, my mom watches a lot.
Because Sharon Needles has a great look and is kind of creepy and does the whole gothy thing really well. And that would actually kind of be in contrast to, let's say, you get another drag queen that's one of the beauty drag queens, and they're the team on out on the street, and it would be good.
You could, so it really does.
Let's crowdfund this shit, guys.
It would work. That's the thing. It's funny. Like at the time, I almost think it was much more progressive. Because it seems like what this film does, or in these film series do, is they fit in today's society a lot more than it might have even then.
Yeah,
agreed. Yeah. So that's pretty much going to do it for our extended look, review, and just talking points about the Angel series. Once again, if you want to pick up this series, you can pick up the 3 movies available from Vinegar Syndrome. Clearly, this is a pretty high endorsement from us here on Loose Cannon. What we're going to be talking about next time, we're not entirely sure yet. We're typically doing these shows about once a month, maybe twice a month, depending. I would expect we'll probably do a bunch of Loose Cannons closer to Halloween. In addition to our Halloween topic show or talking point. Hopefully we're going to get Andrew Roebuck here on the show because he loves talking about all sorts of B movies and stuff like that. So we'll have lots of people on the show. Of course, it'll be me, Alex, and Aaron talking about the things that you should check out. If you've got the time, you most certainly will not be disappointed. So until next time, from Kitchener, we have been
Alex.
From Michigan,
Aaron.
And from the wonderful land of Guelph, the kingdom of Dufferin County, I have been, Wellington County, I believe. I'm Mike the Birdman saying, be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
Yeah!